So the determine number of incorrect answers needs the number of correct answers, okay, and the number of questions, which we have here. And so I'm going to copy that and provide it to this function. And we know that the determine number of incorrect answers function returns the number of incorrect answers. And so I'm going to create a variable to store that number of incorrect answers. So let's break this. We exceeding this line. Let's break this somewhere around here. Still exceeding this line, so let's break it somewhere around here. Type in a backslash, hit enter. Okay. So now we have the number of correct answers, number of incorrect answers. So we can use that value to actually determine if the student passed or failed. But also we need to display a list. We'll have a list showing the question numbers of the incorrectly answered questions. Now we have the list. We can get access to the list. We created a function to get that list, which is get incorrectly answered question numbers. Let's call that function. Let's get that list. And this function get incorrectly answered question numbers is going to need the exam correct answers list, right? Which is basically this one. So I'm going to pass in here the correct answers list to it. And it's also going to need the student answers list, which we have here. Student answers list. Okay, so we know this function get incorrectly answered questions. The incorrectly answered question numbers returns a list containing the incorrect question numbers. So it returns the incorrect question numbers list. So when it's returning that, we need a place to store it. So I'm going to store it in the same variable, basically. Incorrect, let's call this, what did we call it? We call it incorrect question numbers list. Let's create a variable with the same name. Incorrect question numbers list. And store whatever list is being returned. Store it here. Doesn't matter, we're using the same names. The scope of this variable here is within the main function, so they don't see each other. They're considered different because they're in separate functions. We're exceeding this line here, so I'm going to break it somewhere around here. Type in a backslash, hit enter. Still exceeding. I'm going to break it somewhere around here. Type in a backslash, hit enter. All right, so we have the list stored here. And then now we have all the values, everything we want to display. We created a function called print results that takes in whatever we need to print. So I'm going to call that function. I'm going to call it print results, and we know that print results needs the number of correctly answered questions, which we have here, number of correct answers. It also needs the number of incorrectly answered questions, which we have here, number of incorrect answers. Well, this is just the parameter name, so it doesn't matter. We're going to pass in whatever value is supposed to go in place of this, and it's the number of incorrect answers. The third thing it needs is the incorrectly answered question numbers list, which we have here. Incorrectly answered, sorry, we call it incorrect question number list. It needs that, so I'm going to pass that to this function. And well, let's break this somewhere around here. Type in a backslash, hit enter. So based on how we created our print results function, it's printing out the number of correctly answered questions. It's printing out the number of incorrectly answered questions as well. And it's also printing out this result. We created a function, print results here, that goes, hold on. All right, so over here again, I'm sure some of you noticed it. We created a function called print values in a list, which takes in a list and displays the values in a list. But in our print result function, I called print result. I wasn't supposed to do that. I meant to call the print values in a list function. So I know some of you probably saw it, and you're probably confused. So sorry about that. But what we wanted to do was take our incorrectly answered question numbers list and print the values in it. We created a function for that. I didn't mean to type in, or I didn't mean to call the print results function. It doesn't make sense here. So now we call the print values in list function, and it prints out all the values in there. So according to our print result function, we're displaying these values. We are printing out the results in our incorrectly answered question numbers list. And we also have to determine if the student passed or failed. We can do that directly in our main function, or we can add it to our print results. We can add it here. So we have a function called student pass exam. We can call it. Let's actually include all that in our print results function. So I'm going to create an if statement and say if student pass exam. I'm going to call this function. If student pass exam, we know this function needs a couple of arguments. It needs the pass mark. All right. If we're going to do that, then that means we need to pass those values, the pass mark, to this function. Let's not do that. Let's check that in our main function. So scratch that. We'll keep it. We'll keep the print function this way, the print results function this way. And in our main function, after we've printed out the results, let's have an if statement that says if the student passed exam. We know that's a function. It needs the pass mark. So let's create the pass mark. Let's store the pass mark as a constant as well. Okay. So down here, I'm going to create a constant called pass mark. The pass mark according to the question is 15. It said over here, a student must correctly answer 15 of the 20 questions to pass the exam. So I'm going to set it to 15. So if student pass exam, that function needs the pass mark. I'm going to provide it here. We have it stored here. So I'm going to provide it to this function. It also needs the student answers list, which we have here. So I'm going to provide it to that. And we know this function is going to return a true or false. Or is it? Here, it's going to return a true or false. A true or false. So when we know with if statements, if the expression here results to a true, basically if it results true, then what's in the if block here is going to run. If it results to false, then what's in the else block is going to run if this function has if this if statement has an else part. Well, so if the student passed exam, if that's true, then let's print out the message saying that the student passed the exam. Else means that this expression here didn't result to true. In other words, the student pass exam function didn't return true. That means it returned false. So if we return false, then let's print out the message saying that the student failed the exam. Okay, so I think we're done with the main parts of this program. I think so, but let's test it out. I'm sure there are a few errors in here, left and right, but let's see. So if we run the program right now, let's save this. So save selected files. I'm going to go to where we save our programs. It's on the desktop. I'm going to create a new folder for this program. I'm going to call this, well, this is called driver's license exam, I believe. So driver's license exam. And I'm going to save this file as driver's license exam.py. license exam.py. Save that here. Okay, so if we run this program right now, nothing happens. Nothing happens because we've only created functions here. You've only created functions, but we haven't called any function yet. Okay, so even though the main function has functions we're calling, even though we're calling functions here in the main function is a function itself, and we need to call it before it can execute. So I'm going to call the main function here. And so now let's run it and see if we have any errors. Okay, so it's kind of working. It says, please enter the answer for question 1. I want to add a colon here and a space, just so we know where to type. Or it gives them an indication, the user an indication of where to type. So just to point out a few things, I'm going to open, let's see here, desktop. I'm going to open the folder, Python, Programming Challenges, Chapter 7. This is driver's license exam. So we run the program, and it created that file. It created the student answers text. There's nothing in there. We didn't have that file in there. We didn't. But when we run the program, it called this function, which is store student answers in file. And we know that takes in the file name, which is the student answers text. And then it creates it. When we look into the when you look at the store student answers in file function, it opens that file in write mode. So that created that file basically in the same place, the same location where we had. So let's open that. The same location where we saved our program. So it created this file. We didn't create this file. We just saved this program in this folder. And when we run the program, it created this file. But it has nothing in there because we haven't typed in anything yet. So I'll keep this open just so we can refer to it. Okay. So let's run the program. It says, I wanted to add a colon here and a space. So let's do that. So please enter the answer for question. This is where it's displaying question 1, for example. All of this here. So I'm going to concatenate a string, which is a colon and a space. Let's run this again. Now we have a colon and a space when we want to type. Answer. Please enter the answer for question 1. So let's do that. I'm going to type in A. So these are the answers here. I'm going to type in A for all of them and see what happens. So A here, hit enter for all of them. And see what happens. We're going to encounter some errors, but I'll point it out when we do. All right, so the first one, list index out of range. So let's see here. List index out of range. So number of questions is going to be the length of the exam correct answers. How many questions do we have? How many answers do we have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. Also, it's 20, right? So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So that 10 below 2, so that 20. And the user typed in that. All right, so first of all, let's see if the program stored these values in the file. So it did. But it stored them this way, store them horizontally. So it's saying out of range because there's only one line in this file. So basically, this student answers.txt file contains only one line. We don't want it stored this way. We want all the values stored vertically. The reason why it's saying out of range is because it has only one item in the student answers list, and it has 20 items or 20 answers in the exam correct answers list. And so it's saying out of range because you're accessing something that is outside the range of the student answers list. Okay, it's outside the range of that. See, that's over here. If student answers list current, we're accessing something outside the range of the student answers list. And so let's fix that first of all. And I knew this. I just wanted to get here so I can explain. So let's go to where we are writing the answers to the list here, which is right here, where we are storing the student answers in the file. This is where we are writing the answers to the file. So we don't want to just write the answer and then write the next one next to it. This loop is going to write the answer and then write the next one next to it and write the next one next to it and so on and so forth. We want to write the answer, but then let's concatenate a new line character to it. Because if you concatenate a new line character, it's going to write the answer. It's going to write the answer in the file. It's going to write A, for example, which is the first one. The new line character is going to, we're concatenating a new line character to it. The new line character is going to move the position from the end of that first value. Let's just open this file here. So let's say I write the first one A. The new line character, when I concatenate it next to it, is going to move the position from the end of this A to the next line. And anything that follows that first item here, that first value here, is going to be displayed from the next line going. Okay, so by concatenating a new line character to it, we ensure that we print each value on one line. We print the value, create a new line, print another value, create a new line, print another value, create a new line, and so on and so forth. So that's why. That's why we have only one line in this file. So let's try that first of all, just to make sure we fix that issue at least. Okay, so going to enter A for all of them. And let's see if it changes in the file. Going to encounter more errors, I believe. Okay, so let's see. Let's check the file first of all before we come and check any of this. So now we can see that all the answers are stored vertically. So that's correct. Now it has 20 items in the answers, the student answers list, and it has 20 answers in the exam correct answers list as well. All right, so let's see how this is displaying. We have all our answers here. We typed in A for all of them, but it's saying that the number of correctly answered questions is 0, and the number of incorrectly answered questions is 20. If you look at the correct answers list, some of them were A, so at least we should have gotten those correctly, or correct. So I explained that, but before that, let's display this. Let's work with the format. Let's format this a little bit. Let's move this to the next line. So after displaying the number of correctly answered questions, we want the number of incorrectly answered questions to be displayed from the next line going. So this is basically our print details. One second here. This is our print details. Did I miss it? Print results here. So by default, when you pass in arguments into the print function, they are displayed with a space separate in them. So this is one entire argument, and then there's a comma. This is another entire argument, and then there's another comma, right? And there's a default separator of a space. That is why it printed out the first argument. We had a space here, and it printed out the second argument. We can change that space. We can change that default separator. I'm going to pass in the SCP argument and change it to new line character \n. Remember, the new line character moves the position from where it's at. It creates a new line, basically. It moves the position from the end of whatever it print to the next line, and anything that follows whatever you've printed is followed from the next line going. So it prints out that. We're saying print out this first argument here. Don't separate it with space, separate it with a new line, move the position from the end of that line to the next line, and then print the next item, and separate that with a new line if anything follows it. Let's just check that at least. We're going to go back and forth just making sure this is correct, or this works out well. So bear with me here. Type in A, copy it. Okay, we have an error here. So SCP is an invalid keyword argument for a string. Let's see here. Okay, so I made a mistake here. I typed it in the string over here. I typed it in this. Hold on one second. I typed it in the string function. I wasn't supposed to do that. I was supposed to type that in the print function. Okay, outside of this value here. It's because of the way we've kind of broken them on separate lines, and that's why it looks a bit confusing. So I typed it in the string function. It's in the print function. The print function has that default separator. We're changing that default separator from a space to a new line character here. Okay, so let's fix that. Type in A. Again, we're going to go back and forth just to fix this stuff. Okay, so we have fixed that. Number of correctly answered questions is 0. Number of incorrectly answered questions is 20. Still incorrect though. We'll fix it. Let's create a new line after typing in all our values. So before it displays the number of correctly answered questions, let's embed a new line character here. New line character here. So we have that. So it's going to move, because there's a new line character here, it's going to move the position from here to the next line. Okay, and anything that follows it, in this case, this is going to be displayed from that next line going. So do that. Again, bear with me here. I just want this to be clear, just so when you want to manipulate yours, you can understand exactly how it's working. Okay, so now we have a new line here. We have this also displayed. And also let's display a new line before it displays these numbers. These are the numbers for the incorrectly answered questions. Well, so let's display a new line after that. All right, so it displays these values here before. So this is after it displays these two values. Let's create a print function. I'm going to call the print function. Now, when you call the print function and you type in a value to print, it's going to print that value for you. But we know that the print function, I don't know if I mentioned it, but the print function by default ends with a new line. So it's going to print out this, for example. It's going to print it out, but it's going to move the position from the end of the line to the next line, and anything that follows this is going to be displayed from the next line going. By default, the print function ends with a new line. So when you call the print function and type in nothing, it's going to still print out something. That something happens to be nothing. It's going to print out nothing on that line, but the print function by default ends with a new line, which means it's going to move the position. After printing out nothing, it's going to move the position from the end of that line to the next line, and anything that follows that nothing, that empty line, is going to be displayed from the next line going. So by calling the print function with nothing entered into it, passed into it, you're basically creating an empty line. Okay, I know we're checking every single detail here, but just to make sure that you guys understand. If you already understand, please feel free to skip through it. If it's helping, then that's good. All right, so now we have a space here. We display our values, and then we have a space here. Let's display these numbers horizontally instead of vertically. Let's display them horizontally. These are the incorrect answered questions, and this is a function called print values and list. So again, the print function has an this time around it has an ending value. It ends with a new line character. We can change that. I'm going to pass in a comma here. Again, I have about 8 minutes to leave the library, so it closes at 11. So I think we'll be able to finish this. So print, we're going to print out the value, but we can change the end default value from a new line character to a comma and a space. Okay, to a comma and a space. So let's just try that again. Oops, we missed out that. Let's try it again. Okay, and then after displaying all these numbers, we want a new line and also display the pass status. So after printing all the values in list, this is the function that does that for us. Or before we display whether the student passed the exam, which is right here, before we display that, we can have a new line character. Or before we can have a space here, an empty line here. So call the print function. All right, so we know it's going to work. I just want to test it out. Okay, so now we have the number of correct answers. We have everything displaying correctly, but it's not right. It's not right because I'm typing A's for my answers. The actual answers has A's in them, so I should get those correct. Okay, that's because of the answers. Because remember, we retrieved all the answers stored in the list. We retrieved all the answers stored in the file. We read all the answers here. Okay, from the file to a list. Just for curiosity's sake, let's see what's stored in the list. Okay, let's see what's stored in the list. So this is where we get the list, the student answers list. Let's print out what's stored in it. Let's print out the student answers list. That is where the error is coming from, and I want to point that out very quickly before we hit 11 here. So A for all of them. Okay, so this is our list here, and we can see it's storing the answers all right. But again, I don't know. Again, I think in the previous program we had this issue too. It has a new line character next to each answer, because when it's reading from the file, you can't really see the new line character. Okay, it's reading this A, for example, but there's a new line character attached to the right of it. We don't see it, but that's what's causing these numbers to be stored vertically. So the new line character is causing the next value, the next item to display from the next line going. So it displays A. The new line character is basically moving the position from the end of the line to the next line, and then it displays the next value. And the new line character is moving from the end of the line to the next line and displaying the next value, and so on and so forth. So there is no match. The actual item stored in the list is this, A\n. We need to get rid of this \n, so it stores the actual answers in there. And so before we add the value to the list, this is where we are actually storing the values from the file to a list here. We are appending, after reading from the file, we are appending that value, that student answer, to the list. But before we append it to the list, let's strip that new line from the right of each student answer. And we can do that with the rstrip method. Okay, file object have that method called rstrip. It strips something from the right of a value. In this case, what we want to strip, so we are dealing with the student answer here. We take the student answer, I'm going to call rstrip. I'm stripping from the right of this value here. And what am I stripping from the right? It has to be the exact value you want to strip from the right. If you look at our value here, what's on the right of this value is the \n. I want to strip out the \n. I'm stripping from the right of this value, \n. And when I'm stripping from the right of this value, I want to store it back in student answer. I'm storing the result back in student answer. And then now I store the answer without the \n in the list. Okay, so this here returns whatever is left after stripping the new line character. So when I run this program now, type in all A's, we can see that now it's storing over here when we are printing out the answers, it's storing the actual answers here. We don't have to display it going forward. But we can see that now the value is also correct. We answered number of correctly answered questions is 7. Let's see if it's correct. Let's see how many A's there are in this correct answers list. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So that's correct. That means we answered correct answers because we typed A's for all our answers, and there are 7 A's here. So we answered 7 correct answers. So the answers we didn't answer correct were the ones that wasn't A. So we answered question 2, we answered incorrectly. You can see it here. Question 3, we answered incorrectly. Question 5, we answered correctly, so it's not displayed here. Question 6 and 7, we answered correctly, so it's not displayed here. Question 8, we answered incorrectly, so it's displaying here. Question 9, so on and so forth. Question 20, we answered correctly, we typed in an A, so it's not displaying here. And it says the student passed the exam. So we need to fix that because you have to get a 15 or more. So let's fix that right here. This is going to be our function that it determines whether we pass. So over here is if student passed the exam. So if student passed the exam, let's revisit that function. It needs the pass mark and it needs the student answers list. So if the length of the student answers list, no. Over here we made a mistake. We're supposed to pass in the student correct let's see here. This is a mistake we did. We weren't supposed to keep we need to pass in the list containing we need to pass in how many correct answers the user got over here. So we made a mistake with the student pass exam function. So bear with me here. We need to pass in over here, not the student answers list. Okay, we need to pass in how many correct answers the student got. And so I'm going to create a parameter for number of correct answers. Okay, number of correct answers. So bear with me here. And so if the number of correct answers, okay, not the length of this, so scratch that. If the number of correct answers is greater than or equal to the pass mark, then return true. Okay, and so over here where we are actually calling the function, we don't want to pass in the student answers list. We want to pass in the number of correct answers, which we have here. So now this fixes it. Let's try this again. Type in A's for all of them. And it said you failed the exam. That's correct. We failed the exam. But let's try to get more than 15 correct and see. So these are the actual answers. These are the actual answers here. I'm going to try to type in, get some of them correct. So it's A, B, C, C, A. We're getting the first 10. Oops. Well, this I know I got incorrect. I didn't type anything. So I'm going to type in A for 11, D for 12. Basically, as many of these correct. All right, hit enter. Now it says the student passed the exam. All right, and the only question I answered incorrectly was question 10 because I provided nothing for it, and I got 19 correct questions and 1 incorrect question. All right, so it's providing correct answers. The only thing is we don't need to display this list in our output, so you can get rid of that. So it's working. So one thing I wanted to also mention out, this chapter doesn't point out trying to convert a string to lowercase and uppercase. So when you are providing your answers, make sure you're providing uppercase characters, because really there are uppercase answers stored here. If you provide a lowercase, there wouldn't be a match. There's a difference between an uppercase A and a lowercase a. So for now, just provide uppercase characters. In the next chapter or so, it covers converting strings to uppercase and lowercase, and when we're writing our programs, we'll incorporate that. So for now, just provide uppercase characters for your answers. So I don't have a lot of time. It's 11 and the library is closed, and I need to get out. So sorry about the rush and sorry about the mistakes, but please go through the video. Make sure you fix all the errors that we encountered. At the end of the day, the program works. Just make sure you go through the video and fix all the errors we encountered. I apologize for that. That's actually a kind of a good thing when you're coding. You encounter errors and it helps you learn. So I hope it helps you guys. If you have any questions, please comment down below and I'll do everything to respond to them. Thank you very much for watching. Sorry I'm speeding. It's time. Post any questions and I'll do everything to respond to them. Take care. Have a good night, and I'll see you next time with the next program. All right then. Bye-bye.